Sí, perdoneu. I'm sorry. This is the way to do it. They are not never Vamos a continuar? Yes. Bona tarda a tothom. Seguim amb la tanda de xerrades d'aquesta tarda. Els hi voldria presentar el proper ponent, que farem una primera tongada de 2 ponències, després un petit debat de preguntes que serà del conjunt dels 5 ponents anteriors, i després ja passarem a l'última conferència de la tarda, que ja els hi presentaré en l'últim moment. Però de moment li vull donar la benvinguda al senyor Jorgen Hempel. Nice to meet you and thank you very much to welcome. El senyor Hempel és el fundador de l'empresa Ecosystemz, Hempel Ecosystemz, i de la Maison du Nord, que és una emprenedoria de Suïssa, que estan treballant amb materials per fer murs de tancament i de fet estan experimentant a l'espai Xema, que tenim aquí a Barcelona, com vosaltres sabeu, allà davant del MACBA, amb aquest tipus de materials. Ha sigut un col·laborador d'aquest congrés i per tant li agraïm la seva col·laboració. Després tindrem també el senyor Gabriel Kosowski, que és originari d'Argentina però que fa molts anys que viu aquí a Barcelona, i el Gabriel Kosowski treballa amb també temes de prefabricats de terra i de palla, si no tinc mal entès, i perdoneu-me la ignorància perquè aquí no m'ho expliquen exactament. Està treballant també amb uns sistemes d'intentar d'organitzar productes prefabricats amb aquests materials naturals i és un inici d'empresa que crec que també pot ser molt interessant una mica per arrodonir tots aquests temes que estem tractant aquí. Jo sense més dilació ja li passo la paraula al senyor Hempel i després ja seguirem amb el programa. Moltes gràcies.
I understand that the translation is not working, so I promise I will speak slowly for those who may not be so... It's working. Oh my God. Then I speak real fast. Well, it is, first of all, I have to tell you that to be back in Barcelona, where I started as an industrialist when I was 20 years old, making industry in Sabadell, which that time were booming fields with cows and trees and everything, go and see it now, and be back many, many times to this wonderful city, which is giving somebody from outside a lot of inspiration, and in particular when it comes to human beings and what human beings are able to create. We are talking about building and maybe a new way to build. And I would like to tell you that we sometimes forget that for thousands and thousands of years, man has been building using nature as its sole supplier, because there wasn't anything else. And when you look back at seeing what our ancestors have been able to achieve, and Barcelona is a very good example, it's amazing. And the most amazing is that inside these houses you feel good, and outside, after 500, 600, 700, sometimes much more, these buildings are still standing there. Amazing. Or is it just so that they were much more clever than we are? Time has maybe come to revise what we are doing, because it is only about 70 years that we suddenly had to change what our ancestors had done for so many thousand years. For what? Because it is good for nature, or because it was good for human beings to change, go to cement, concrete, fibers, materials that we know are synthetic, coming from petroleum and from minerals, or were there other driving forces behind it which made this big change? I will not answer that question. Some of you certainly know it already, but I would just want to mention this as a starting point, because what I'm going to do now, I will give you a small history of what has happened. Then I will go back and talk about nature and human beings, what we have done and what we have not done. Then I would like to give you a humble example of how we could possibly change this in a most efficient way. And then in the end, I'm going to give you a small video just for the entertainment, which comes straight out of the Biennale di Venezia, which opened 2 weeks ago. It was certainly with the mind of wanting to use nature as a supplier that we now 25 years ago, when I lived in France and was occupied with renovating historical monuments, that I suddenly came across somebody who came to me at the door and knocked and said, I have discovered that the Cannabis Sativa plant, once you have taken off the fibers, the stem, they throw it away. They don't know what to do with it. And he said, but I have discovered that the inside, the wood of the cannabis plant, when you chop it up and you analyze it, it has up to 70% silica, which is arena, sand, and it is full of little holes. Now, with a material, a plant, which is very, very unusual, I can only think of bamboo being in the same category. If a plant contains sand, it doesn't burn and it doesn't rot. And of course the argument was then, okay, if we already have a plant with these qualities, then we are already halfway to make a good building material. And on that one we started mixing, doing all kinds of things to make it into a usable building material coming straight out of nature. It was complicated in the beginning. We had many, many tests to be done with different binders to be able to build a wall, to be able to make an insulation. But slowly we managed to do that. The market was very limited to ecological people who wanted to live in a healthy house. But we managed to do this. It was quite expensive, and I would say around 2000 it was sort of dropping off, and I went back to Switzerland and wanted to take my retirement, which I never managed to do in my life. The time reached 2005, and then suddenly the market changed. People started talking about energy, consumption, resources, and they started talking about building in different ways in order to achieve something that has not been achieved for a long time, because the qualities of the houses which have been built for more than 70 years, I think it was a Spanish architect who said to me, we carry a cross on our shoulder for having built so badly for such a long time. I think he was not quite right, not quite fair. I think it would be better to say that the houses we have been built do not live up to the standard which we require today for other reasons than we had 70 years ago. Anyway, there's no excuse. We had to do something about it. And I said, okay, now we are going to do something serious about the construction with the formulas and the mixture of hemp and binders, and we have to do something about the equipment, and we have to set up a way of distributing, getting the message across and distributing these materials, and then we will see what happens. The time from 2005 until, let's say, 2 years ago was really innovating. And I will show you later how we were able to put together materials that would perform and which we have today fully available and equipment fully efficient to do the job we had to do. And I want to tell you that the principle we used for doing that was we put the materials here in the middle, and then we put two pillars, one on each side. One pillar is called nature, and the other one is called human beings. And whatever we did, we asked ourselves, is this good for nature and this good for human beings? And whenever we said not really, then we went back, started over again until we reached the goal we wanted. Everything we do has to be good for nature and good for human beings. A principle which I installed and which I'm happy to say that in our organization, in all the countries we are working now, this is followed by our people because they know that that's the way it has to work. Why haven't we done that before? What is it that has been driving us to build the way we do today? Knowing very well that the materials that we are using, and I will come back to that a little later with some graphics, the materials we are using are not good for nature and are not good for human beings. When industry and started producing these new materials, what was the driving force behind it? We know now, of course, absolutely. It was market share, it was money, it was building big industries, and then shooting up, developing new products that could perform like concrete, very fast, very strong, and very quick. Other products were done, and we can talk about insulation materials, which used to be you put on 12 centimeters of a kind of insulation material. Now, today, the more you put on, the better it is. Volume to sell more. I note just to underline one thing, that when you go through the evolution for the last, let's just take 15 or 20 years, there is no regard to human beings or to nature whatsoever in the materials that we are using today. It is as if nature and human beings didn't exist at all. Other forces are much more priorities than what we should be caring about more than anything else. How serious is this situation today? And I now go to the second chapter. Nature. Have any of you read the GIEC report? This GIEC is the World Authority on Environment. It came out in January. I think for the first time the scientists who are involved in this, some of them very clever men, have done their report for the first time without being censored by politicians and by oil-producing nations. The report, I can tell you, is terrifying. I have never in my life imagined that we have gone so far in destroying our own base for continuation as human beings. I think, without going into details, I can summarize the report with remark from the famous Professor Oppenheimer from Princeton University in the United States. He says, "We have reached the point of no return. There is no way that we can repair what we have already destroyed." And he said, we can only hope that nature will be able to correct what we have been doing to our nature. Scientists don't hope. They work with hypotheses and with facts. And when a scientist starts talking about hoping, then I think what he means is this is too serious to be able for us to accept. We know, unfortunately, that governments have so far done nothing to correct this situation. And I believe myself that we cannot expect from governments to do anything. When I say governments, I also mean Brussels, of course. Maybe it is not their role either. We have not to expect anything from scientists who have been able to work out a number of gadgets. Each one is marked, this one will save the planet. Good for them. But I would not suggest to you to listen to political talk, what they have done and not done, or not even to look at the gadgets. All you have to do is look at the result. We have said, politicians have said for the last 15 years that in 2020, pollution, CO2 emission will go down by 20%. 2013 was the highest emission year ever in the history of manhood. So something is wrong. If politicians and scientists are not doing anything about it, who will be doing anything about it? Who else could be there? We, the people. We are not government. We are maybe not scientists. We are not industry. And we are not money manipulators, who are the forces today in our world. We are the fathers and the mothers of our children. And that means a great responsibility on our shoulders. Enough to say, stop. We have to do something about it. I will now go to the third part of my address to you, and I will humbly show to you what could be done or what is being done. It will not save the planet, but at least show that we are not desperately without solutions. We started off with the hemp plant, chopped in little pieces. It's not expensive. It's grown in France and a number of other countries, and every year the production of this incredibly and magic plant is almost doubling. I just came from Germany from the big Congress, yearly Congress for hemp producers, and it is just moving ahead because everybody now understands that for so many reasons this plant is absolutely useful for nature and useful for human beings. We mix the herds, as it is called, with calcium carbonate, calc, calcium in your language. And you see a little spot next to it are 5 minerals which we put in it, and I will explain to you in a minute why. We add water, we drive to the work site, put it in a mixing machine, and within 3-4 minutes we have made the mixture, and below you will then see that a paste is coming out. It is humid and it sticks very well together. The plant you see there is the Cannabis Sativa. It grows literally everywhere. Let me say that Spain many years ago was a huge producer of cannabis. Everywhere you had it. And when Christopher Colon, he sailed to America, of course all his sails and his ropes were made of hemp. The calcium carbonate, which I will come back to, is in the middle, and you will see that with one product, one mixture, we can insulate the roof, the walls, and the ground floor, and if it is a new house, we can make whole walls in one membrane. If we put it on the roof, we put it in between the beams, we just rake it, level it, compact it very slightly, and within 2 days you can walk on it. It doesn't burn, it doesn't rot. If water comes on it, it will just run down. Animals don't go into it, and it doesn't burn. When we build a new house, then we need a structure. It can be wood structure, it can be steel structure, it could be even concrete structure, like pillars. And then we put formwork, the metal formwork, which we have developed ourselves, for the first in the world, by the way. You only fix it up and down once, put it on both sides, and fill it with the mixture. The moment you have fixed it, you undo the screws, move it up, you count 1, 2, 3, move it up, and the wall stands by itself. Here the wall comes up. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning, now we are 9, 10 o'clock, and the wall is finished. Here's a new house with wood structure in to hold it. And when we do the flooring with floor heating, we don't put any polystyrene or things like that in. We put the hemp in and put the floor heating directly on the hemp. Now, we have lately made a new development. We have seen the first pictures were all either new houses or renovation, where we renovate a house, putting insulation inside or outside. And then we started about 2 years ago to be very conscious about a new problem, which basically we had not even thought about, and was what we call pollution inside the houses. I will come back to that in a minute to show you what that means, how we are living in general in inside environment which is slightly acid, very bad for our health, and all that due to the many toxic materials which are incorporated in modern building materials. It's bad for us, but it's particularly bad for children. They have only a quarter of the body to take it, and they are much more active than grown-ups. They consume as much oxygen as we do, and there's no way that they can take this kind of thing. We suddenly discovered that by using calcium carbonate in our mixture, we are getting what you call an alkaline climate inside the house. And suddenly we discovered that without any extra charge, without having developed anything at all, we were now able to take out toxic materials inside the houses, houses that suffer from humidity problems, and we pre-mix, and then we spray on the wall 3-4 centimeters of this material. We level it, and you have a beautiful finish. It will not give you a big insulation, but it will regulate the humidity within the house. And let me, you architects, you know all about this, but just to remind you that we human beings, we don't suffer from cold or warm. We can regulate that, as we heard this morning for our friend from India. We can regulate that with our clothes, but humidity, and in particular condensation, we cannot do anything but try to cure it, not by ventilation, not by dehumidification, but by natural means. This material goes into bathrooms in every house that we are building, showers, kitchens, which we have the highest humidity, steam from the shower and from the bath, and our bathrooms are lined with that, and we have no ventilation in the bathrooms at all. The walls work for us free of charge. They absorb because of the tiny little holes I talked to you about, they absorb the humidity in the room, the steam. You finish your job cleaning yourself, you walk out, leave the door open, within 5 minutes you walk in there as if nobody had been in there for hours. The walls have taken it up and given it back very quickly and very naturally. Here are just a few pictures of houses. This is a huge building built in granite, not insulated at all, with 10 centimeters hemp. The hemp has not been covered by any kind of lining outside. It's been standing there for 6, 7 years now, and the resistance of the hemp, once it is in there, is because of the lime getting harder and harder every year. Here is a house in Latvia, in the Baltics. We built it during the winter time with minus 23 degrees and no problem whatsoever. Now, I want to go back to something extremely important. Can you hear me if I'm not? Yeah, that's okay. Huh? We have two kinds of lime that we are talking about, and this is one of the fundamentals of what I'm presenting to you now. The hydrated lime is what we find the Romans were building their you still need it. Okay, then, well, you will see hydrated lime here, and you see hydraulic lime on the other side. Then you're home, huh? So the hydrated lime was what we find with Roman buildings. We find them during the Renaissance. Oh, good thing. Is it working? Yeah. So that is what the Romans built Rome with. That is what we used in the Renaissance, when so many cathedrals and castles and so on were built, and everything worked fine. It was one of the most incredibly good materials to build with, and when we walk around and see these old buildings today, the lining they have on the outside, which still looks very good, is 400, 500, 600 years old, and no maintenance. It's still there. Okay? So this is an extremely natural and very, very powerful material. When it comes out, it is calcium stone, limestone. It is then heated to 800, 900 degrees, becomes powder, because otherwise it's too difficult to work with. And then when we put it back into hemp and water in the mixing machine, a carbonation starts. And this carbonation tells you that this is a material that will never die. We have found houses that are 1,000 years old, and the carbonation is still going on. Why is this carbonation so important? Because when we have it in the wall, the curing of the material, hemp, lime, and water, will now do its hardening by water and taking up CO2. And this is not something we have invented. This is, any scientist know about that. And when we discovered that, we just said, my goodness, if people could live in a house and live in bedrooms and dining rooms and whatever, and they have walls which take up CO2 all the time without it costing anything, it's free of charge, we have really made a big step forward. But what people are using, and what people have been using even with hemp, is cement. Because cement, you put it in hemp, water, and it dries immediately and will stand there. But this hydraulic lime, which is not pure like this one, has to be heated to 1200, 1500, and if you heat it to 1800, it becomes Portland cement. You put it in water, it cures, it dries, and it's dead. You can go home, nothing is going to happen. Here, it continues for years and years and years and give you the effect I just talked about. What is the drawback? The drawback is, and everybody knows that, and that's why this kind of lime has disappeared from the market. When, for drying, it takes 4 to 6 months. The Romans could wait for that, and even Leonardo da Vinci could wait for that. We cannot today. So what we did 3 years ago, I ordered our laboratory, which is in Antwerp, to start finding a way whereby we could make this cure faster. And we discovered 5 minerals which come straight out of the ground, and with a spoon we put that into the lime, and the lime cures within 2 days. let me tell you, because of course I'm proud of that, we won last year the world first prize in biomaterial innovation for this, and the professor who, 3 minutes, okay. So basically so what we did was we solved this problem, and we were told that we had solved a 2,000-year problem. And we are happy about that, because this permits us now to give to people a proper living inside their houses. I would like to tell you that we have come to the point, in my opinion, where, having spoken about nature already, I will speak about human beings, and I spoke to you about us living in acid environment. Oh, here. Yeah. No, wait a minute. There. The pH scale, we have acid down here. New York is here, Tokyo is here, acid. People live in a slightly acid atmosphere, but children live at home and in schoolrooms that are not proper for them. It is scandalous to let children live in schoolrooms, classrooms, and even some houses as it is. We know it, we go there, we measure it. It's absolutely incredible that this goes on without anybody doing anything about it, except Italians have just finished a big study, and they said that 30% of all Italian children suffer from asthma or from respiratory illnesses. We go up the alkaline scale. Alkaline is sea, mountain, country, and the top of the alkaline scale is calcium carbonate, exactly the product that we are using. I want to show you quickly one more slide, which in my opinion tells you a little bit about what we are really doing today and why we cannot just say, well, and it's good enough, and why not, we can continue like that, we could do both, and so on. But when today somebody wants to build a sort of low energy consuming house, a passive house, it can be many types of passive. We heard about Minergy this morning. The content of materials is chemical materials is about 95%. It all comes from petroleum and from minerals. In order to make minerals and petroleum into usable consumer goods, we have to go and make semi-products, final products, finishing them, packing them, and shipping them to the house. This house has to be non-consuming, which is not the case. Of course, it will consume some energy because it needs ventilation. It needs for 30 years, 50 years. But, which is fine, wonderful, we can live in houses without any consumption of energy. But when you go back and see what has happened during this period, we find out that the consumption of energy to produce the materials to be used here and the emission of CO2 is so high that we need, Americans have made this study, 50 years to reach 0.0. The British said it cannot be true. We make the study and they came to 48. I'm a Scandinavian, so I say 30. But that is not the point. The point is that it's not in 30 years that we need to stop energy use and stop pollution with CO2. It's now. So this, in my opinion, falls to the ground, and this kind of building houses, I'm sorry to say that to you, to architects, for me, it's finished, and it's scandalous to do that. It makes no sense, and one could even ask oneself, who invented a thing like that? We are trying to do differently. We are now half a minute more. We are expanding in all European countries and the United States. We are setting up a company, and we have now a position which is an absolute leading position in this way of building and renovating houses with natural materials coming straight out of nature and will contain no toxic materials whatsoever. We have decided as a policy to share this with the world. We are not making a monopoly, we are not taking any advantage of it, we are sharing it. We have stopped building ourselves as hemp ecosystems. We are taking entrepreneurs, we have them here in Barcelona as well, entrepreneurs, we are teaching their workers to work with our materials, we are giving them a certificate, they have to follow our formulas and they have to buy the materials from us so that we are sure that nobody can cheat when it comes to 3 raw materials, and that's all we are using. Like that, we can expand much faster, and I hope, of course, with the architects of Catalonia and many others, that we can form a partnership whereby we have no money to earn, not make market shares or anything like that, but we are moving in the right direction in the name of nature and human beings. Thank you.
No, porque tampoco, no, esta no es, la otra. ¿Con qué le doy para pasar? ¿Con la flecha?
Sí, adelante. Córreme por el micrófono de la flecha. Ah, no, perdón.
No, yo lo hablo en castellano.